Hello, this is Debra Cohen, and this is my podcast, A Story and a Song, about how my life has been recorded through the music that I write to leave a positive legacy or wisdom, things that I've learned that I wish that I knew when I was younger. A later blooming version of Tikkun Olam. So today we're going to talk about America's upcoming holiday in 2025, the 4th of July. And it got me to thinking about the Declaration of Independence and the Pledge of Allegiance and what that actually means to us today. Because I grew up in an era when it was a crime to let the flag touch the ground. And in contrast, today we see the flag on the ground being stomped on in the United States of America. So what has changed? And how can we make this world a better place? If this interests you, then I encourage you to spend the next 30-ish minutes with me. And I'll be right back after this message. A Story and a Song podcast by Debra Cohen. Interfaith music. Every Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Books. Music. Singing for life. How songs elevate in praise. Deeper mysteries of the soul. For all creation. It's the golden age of praise. Singing from your heart and your soul. Music, stories, and merch, of course, on Amazon. A story and a song about life. And again, this is Debra Cohen, and I'd like to start out by inviting synagogues and churches in the United States to listen and share this invitation to restore the Ten Commandments in this country and the traditions of Judeo-Christian values. Let me begin with an interfaith call to action. And I don't want you to be distracted by this patch on my thyroid area. I'm working on improving Hashimoto's with an X39 patch. So if that's something that you're curious about, I have a website for that as a distributor. You can go to energylifewave.com. Dear pastors and rabbis and whosoever will, in a time of moral confusion and national division, it is time for people of faith to unite. We invite your congregation, synagogue, or church to come together in a spirit of unity and shared purpose to restore the timeless values of the Ten Commandments to American public life. This is not about politics. It is about moral renewal. The Ten Commandments represent the foundation of our civil society. Honor, truth, justice, family, and reverence for God. Though removed from many public spaces, these divine principles are needed now more than ever. We are calling on Jewish and Christian communities to pray together and hold joint services around shared biblical values, host educational events about the historical role of the Ten Commandments in America, speak with one voice in civic and governmental spaces, support efforts to protect and restore moral teachings in schools and public institutions. Together, we can model what it means to be one nation under God. We invite your clergy, congregation, youth groups, and community leaders to join this Judeo-Christian movement to renew America's spiritual foundation. Let us rise to this sacred calling, not in fear, not in hatred, but in faith and unity. This is endorsed by the World Zionist Congress and by me, Debra Cohen. And whosoever is listening in the chat today, if this is something that you want to get involved in, we can start it online because it's convenient. But we need to get this ball rolling, and I thought it would be appropriate to talk about this on the upcoming 4th of July. Let us continue, and I'm going to share some facts. So get your notebooks ready while I take a sip of mushroom java. Okay. All right, let me begin, and we're talking how we can make our country more indivisible with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's talk about the historical, cultural, and political terms of what it means to be a Judeo-Christian America. We need to clarify these terms. It does not mean that America has an official religion, but that Judeo-Christian values have historically shaped the moral and civic foundation of the United States, giving public support to Judaism and Christianity in ways that other religions have not traditionally received. And here are some suggestions on how we can propose to work on this. Shared moral foundations in public life. Biblical ethics in law and culture. Core values such as justice, mercy, individual dignity, honesty, and care for the poor. These are drawn from the Hebrew Bible, aka Tanakh, as well as the Brit Hadashah, aka New Testament. They have guided American law and public life. The 10 Commandments have been posted in courthouses, referenced in public debates, and used as a symbol of moral consensus. Though controversial in modern times, their historic presence reflects cultural support for biblical morality. Number 2, on cultural privilege and public recognition, such as national holidays. Many American holidays align with the Christian calendar. Christmas and Easter are national holidays, while Jewish holy holidays like Hanukkah and Passover are widely recognized in public schools and businesses, even if not officially observed. Biblical language and civil discourse. Presidents and political leaders frequently quote from Jewish and Christian scriptures, invoking God, providence, or biblical imagery like the Promised Land, or Good Samaritan, or City Upon a Hill. Public prayer and worship. While non-sectarian in theory, public prayers at government events, such as inaugurations and military chaplaincy, are often rooted in Judeo-Christian tradition, with Christian and Jewish clergy most featured frequently. Something else we can work on is educational and institutional support, Bible and early education. The Bible was the primary textbook in early American schools. Literacy was promoted so children could read the scriptures, both the Old and New Testaments. Hebrew and theology at early universities. Institutions like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton taught Hebrew and theology, grounded in both Judaism and Christianity, training clergy and civic leaders in biblical wisdom. And let me continue on. For the sake of time, I'd like to get to the defense of Judeo-Christian values in American life. Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather not merely to recall the past, but to affirm the moral inheritance that made America great. The Judeo-Christian values that shaped our civilization, our laws, and our national identity. From the pilgrims who crossed the Atlantic with Bibles in their hands, to the founding fathers who drew moral wisdom from both the Hebrew Scriptures and the Christian gospel, this country has long understood itself as a place more than a place, but a purpose. That purpose was grounded in the eternal truth that every human being is made in the image of God. John Adams, our second president, said clearly, quote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other," end quote. He, John Adams, did not speak here of an abstract morality, but of a people shaped by biblical teachings, teachings rooted in both Judaism and Christianity. George Washington, in his farewell address, declared, quote, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports," end quote. Washington did not seek to impose a church, but to preserve a culture in which faith, especially Jewish and Christian faith, would strengthen the republic. Thomas Jefferson, often called a deist, nevertheless funded the teaching of Hebrew at the University of Virginia, and he praised the ethics of Jesus and the moral wisdom of Moses. He owned a copy of the Hebrew Bible, and his Declaration of Independence is built on the conviction that rights come not from kings, but from nature's God, quote, nature's God, end quote. Benjamin Franklin, who helped draft the Declaration, proposed that sessions of the Constitutional Convention begin with prayer, recognizing the need for divine guidance. These were not perfect men, but they believed in moral truth, and they drew that truth from a common source, the Bible, period, not another book, just the Bible. We're talking about America's foundation in Judeo-Christian morals and values, according to the Declaration of Independence, and we're touching upon the Ten Commandments and the wording of the Pledge of Allegiance. America's legal system was not built on any one denomination, but it was undeniably shaped by the moral compass of the Ten Commandments, by the Jewish idea of covenant, and by the Christian call to love your neighbor. I hope you're starting to see how Jews and Christians can work together in this restoration project. In our schools, our courts, and our culture, these values once guided us not to establish a religion, but to sustain a republic. They taught responsibility, self-restraint, charity, justice, and reverence of life. Today, some seek to erase these foundations, but we must remember pluralism only works when rooted in principles. Liberty survives when morality thrives. Judeo-Christian values are not exclusionary. They are inclusive, proclaiming the dignity of every soul, the importance of family, the sacredness of life, and the duty of conscience. As Rabbi Jonathan Sacks once said, quote, The Hebrew Bible is not just a set of religious texts. It is the foundational document of Western liberty, end quote. And, as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us, justice without faith becomes power without purpose. So let us defend not just religious freedom, but the faith-filled values that gave their freedom meaning. Let us uphold what Washington called, quote, the great pillars of human happiness, end quote, religion and morality. And let us do so not in fear, but in faith, not in division, but in unity, under God. May we never forget the spiritual DNA that binds this nation together, Jewish hope, Christian grace, and the shared belief that truth is not made, it is revealed. Thank you, and may God bless the United States of America. Take a moment to think about what you've just heard as I remind us from our American history why the Ten Commandments were removed from a lot of federal buildings. The removal of the Ten Commandments from public places in the United States has largely been the result of legal challenges and Supreme Court rulings grounded in the interpretation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause, which prohibits the government from establishing a religion. These removals have been driven primarily by secular legal organizations and individuals who argue that displaying religious texts in government spaces violates the constitutional separation of church and state. So let's look at an outline of constitutional argument, the separation of church and state. Opponents of public Ten Commandments display argue that such displays endorse a specific religion, aka Judaism or Christianity, which violates the First Amendment. Courts have often agreed, stating that government property cannot promote religious doctrine, even if the moral principles are broadly shaped. 2. Legal precedents. Several major court cases help define the current legal landscape. In the case of Stone versus Graham in 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a Kentucky law requiring the Ten Commandments to be posted in public school classrooms. The court ruled this violated the Establishment Clause because the commandments are, quote, plainly religious in nature, end quote. That was in Kentucky. McCreary County versus ACLU of Kentucky in 2005. The court ruled that framed copies of the Ten Commandments in Kentucky courthouses were unconstitutional because they had a clear religious purpose, not a secular one. Another case, Van Orden versus Perry in 2005. In a complex contrast, the court allowed a Ten Commandments monument to remain on the grounds of the Texas state capitol. The ruling noted the monument's historical and secular context, surrounded by many other displays of American heritage. Yay, Texas. These rulings show that context matters. A commandment's display purely for religious reasons is usually struck down, but one with a broader historical role may be allowed. All right, so who requested the removals? The requests in lawsuits to remove Ten Commandments displays have primarily come from, looks like 3 different individuals or groups. Number 1, the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU has led many legal efforts arguing that public religious displays violate the Establishment Clause. They have represented citizens who feel that the government promotion of the commandments infringes on their religious neutrality or freedom. Because, separation of church and state is the understanding in most classroom textbooks today in the United States is bogus. It's not the way it was intended originally. Original intention was that the state, each of the United States, individual states could not declare a state religion. That was the meaning of the separation of church and state according to our founding fathers. But it turned into something else. Number 2, Freedom from Religion Foundation, FFRF, a vocal atheist and secularist organization that files lawsuits demanding removal of religious symbols from public land. They argue that the state should not endorse or appear to favor any religion. And lastly, but just for this discussion, I'm sure there's more, the individual plaintiffs. Many lawsuits were initiated by local citizens, often parents or public employees who felt coerced, excluded, or discriminated against by government-sanctioned religious displays. What's at stake? Supporters of the Ten Commandments argue that these laws are not just religious, but moral and historical foundations of Western American legal systems. Opponents say that government institutions should not display religious texts, especially when it seems to endorse one faith over another. Now, what do you think that our founding fathers would say about all of this today in 2025? Yes, we all have an answer. We all have an argument. But instead of separating into different arguments, why can't we come together and do a study of the original foundation of the country, the United States of America, and come up with something that reflects the intentions of our founding fathers? In conclusion, the Ten Commandments have been removed from many public spaces, not because of public outrage or government hostility to religion, but because of lawsuits arguing they violate the constitutional principle of government neutrality in religion. The ACLU, the FFRF, and individual citizens have played leading roles in these challenges. Still, the debates continue. Many Americans, including Christians and Jews, believe that the moral teachings of the Ten Commandments remain essential to the health of American society and should be honored, if not always displayed in government buildings. So, let us think about this and let us come together as Jews and Americans and Christians. The American part was the whosoever will, okay? What can we do to restore the Ten Commandments in society? Live them publicly. 2, promote the commandments through culture and education. 3, use legal channels to protect public displays. These are things that we can talk about in meetings. So again, I'm inviting every pastor and every rabbi and whosoever will in the United States to let's start getting together and talk about how to restore Judeo-Christian ethics to unite Americans in 2025. And I want to thank you for listening and hope that this has been of interest to you. I wrote a song called Better Place a few years ago, and I'd like to close with that. Before I do that, I'd like to mention that I am in a contest to try to win first place to sing in New York City this fall. There's going to only be one singer who wins, and that's the one with the most votes. So I'm going to ask you to vote for me, and I'm going to show you how. Every day every 24 hours at this website, you get a free vote. And so I would love, as an indie artist, to have the opportunity to sing before 60,000 people a song of mine that I wrote. And it's called Catfisher. It's about a true story that happened to me. And I'd like to share it with the world. So stick around, and I'm going to share the video Better Place after this message.
Help indie artist Debra Cohen get to play at the Global Citizen Festival in New York City. All you have to do is go to tophitmaker.org and post your votes. Thumbs up the Big Apple. Get her there.
So again, vote for me every day. It helps. It's Global Citizen Organization. They have an annual festival in Central Park, and they use artists like me to sing at these festivals to raise awareness of extreme hunger and what we can do as a global nation to alleviate extreme hunger. So please vote for me. I would truly appreciate it. It seems to require a Facebook login, so I guess if you don't have Facebook, you can't vote. But if you do know somebody that uses Facebook, please share this message with them. I am now in the top 5 for the group. They're going to announce, what's the next step? Top 5. Then it's the quarterfinals coming up this Thursday. I think it's July 3rd. Oh, I have something to celebrate. So please, 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 if you want to support an indie artist by taking a minute of your time and going to tophitmaker.org/2025/Debra, Debra-Cohen, Cohen. So let's think about what I shared with you today as an invitation to pastors and rabbis in the words of the song that I wrote in 2023, and see how we can come together and meet. And if that's something you want to do, then post a comment on my YouTube channel where this live stream will be archived. The handle on YouTube is @JewishRockMusic. Thank you for listening, and have a happy 4th of July.
You wanna change the world to a better place, making lots of noise like a good boy. But your words are filled with hate. Time the army had a little kindness. I remember flower power and the loving. The cheaper way to love someone is sin. We thought we had the answers, but here it is again, the roaring 20s. If my voices blend together in unity, we were then and you are now. Let them walk in peace. Nick said chitter, 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 chatter. The Big Apple. Better schmecker, schmecker, schmecker. We're in tatters. We all fighting something same. Time to stop the blame game. It's a hot matter. Smart, get it right. To live by logic. Unleashing feelings, causing all the trouble. The world is full of bots. Passionless honey. No emotional IQ. No emotional
Emotional IQ.